Hey everyone, welcome back to Berlin Noir. Today we are working on episode 10. And so for this episode, when I was considering what exactly I wanted to build and where I wanted to build, I was messing around in a couple different places in the city, just building off camera some small blocks, mostly just residential stuff. Just more or less messing around, not really doing anything worthy of recording. But eventually, I was like, I need to begin recording something if I want to actually get a video out this week. But I was having a tad bit of motivational problem, I suppose. Not just motivation, but more or less actually trying to figure out what exactly I wanted to build and where. So the problem was not so much motivation, but actually just not being sure or not really having a good idea of what or where I was going to build. So eventually I came across this portion of the map here, which is not really a good view for reference of where it is, but I'm building in what will be more or less in the geographic location of Schöneberg in Berlin. So for reference, I suppose, if you're not familiar, that's, at least on this map where we're building, is south of the Tiergarten and directly east of the large rail yard that Ping Yao built and I guess built on his channel, which I guess if you have yet to see that, go ahead and stop by his channel. That was last week. He built an awesome train yard, so that is directly east of where I'm building here, which as of now is actually to the left of the screen, but geographically is east. But so it's a portion of the map that's on the one opposite side of a river, I guess, or more so a canal, I suppose, that flows through Berlin. And I hadn't really built on this side at all. The only thing that's on this side that has been built is the train yard, which I didn't do myself. But I really wanted to start placing some things and just buildings, whatever, even if it was off camera, because there's a lot of just very basic, repetitive residential blocks, just repeat one after another more or less in this area. But I wanted to start building around the train yard because it's a really detailed train yard, and once I eventually build all the way around it, I'm really looking forward to some awesome cinematics and screenshots with the train yard and everything around it. So in order to do that, this was one of the areas nearby that, as I guess he caught a very brief glimpse of the train yard there on the left side of the screen. But this is one of the areas that has some cool buildings, and has a very, at least unique to an American standpoint. I've noticed it a couple other places in Berlin, so maybe it's not necessarily that unique to Germans or even other European cities. I'm not really sure, but it's what I placed in the very beginning there, the actually a U-Bahn line. It's an elevated U-Bahn line there, which I'm basing off of the Nollendorfplatz station. And so it's connected to my other lines, which I'm just using, or which I've more or less just made as the S-Bahn lines. So I have the S-Bahn train, which I kind of briefly talked about in the previous episode, since I'm not really able to find a non-modern U-Bahn train. So what I'm left with is more or less just doing a bunch of S-Bahn lines with that particular train, and eventually maybe making some of those lines go underground temporarily and pop up in random places, which in this particular location in real life, as you head east of the trains, or of the station there, it actually proceeds to go underground, and I don't really know where it goes from there, but it does go underground around this area, which I I'm not doing that in this particular location. More or less just because just the way my map's been set up and the train lines I have set up and just those train networks, I would have had to rework a lot of things, which I wasn't about to do. And I mean, it's not a super big deal if I don't have the tracks going underground in that particular location, because I will have them in a really nearby location. They're gonna go underground, go through buildings, but yeah, it's not right there. I'm not gonna have it, but that's all right. Not too big of a deal. But so for this location, aside from just the train station there, I started doing, I guess, more. I'm not really sure what you call it, but compared to the more densely built areas of Berlin, closer to the center of the city, where you have just the row houses and just those large buildings just lined up one next to each other, one after another, with no space in between them. As you get outside the city, obviously the buildings and the population is much less dense, so the buildings get smaller. There's also noticeable gaps in between them, so it still seemed to be like these smaller buildings, yet you would, I don't know, people familiar who live in these areas or areas similar, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm sure I am. I'm looking at Google Earth and old aerial views of the city, so I'm not super detailed, at least back then, the available images I have, so it's hard to tell exactly what I'm looking at, but yeah, it just more or less looked like this. So I'll just place these block buildings down with some spaces in between to lay some paths, and place this, I guess it's some European house. I'm not sure the creator, but that one there that's just freestanding in the middle. There seemed to be a couple houses just like similar to that actually in appearance, just sitting in the center of this little block here. But one thing that is definitely noticeable in this particular area of Berlin, at least based on the aerial shots I have from around 1930 of this area, is it was just absolutely more or less covered in trees. It was a very, very pretty looking area, which I guess hence the name Schönberg. I suppose that's why I would imagine it's a nicer area, more decorative. Again, I'm just going based off the name and appearance of satellite views. So appearances can certainly be deceiving. So go ahead and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm sure I'm totally dead wrong on most of what I'm saying here. But regardless, that's what I was going for, the vibe. A lot of trees, trying to make things a little nicer. I do end up actually going off camera and just laying down a bunch of planters along the actual road. So I just cover the streets with trees, and it turns out to look quite nice, which you will actually see that in the cinematics, since I did that off camera, since it was just laying planters and trees, so not super exciting. I'm sure you've all seen that plenty of times before. So yeah, I did it off camera. But anyways, the rest of the video is more or less just doing this type of thing. And at the very end, or towards the end, I guess not the very end, because it is a significant part of the episode, but I build some church that's right near this station as well. The problem when it comes to building all these churches, since there are obviously a very large number of them across Europe and in Berlin, is there's a limit in the number of assets obviously available on the workshop that fit, in a Berlin, Central European, or Austrian theme, I suppose. For instance, this church here is in Austria, if I'm not mistaken, and it's quite clearly more of a medieval-looking design and appearance to the church. So it's not something you'd likely find in Berlin. It doesn't match the color even of the actual church here in real life, but it matches more or less the shape, the single steeple in the front, because I have a couple with 2 steeples. But yeah, so I mean, in the end, I guess it doesn't matter too much the actual appearance of the church, as long as it matches a general Central European, German, Austrian theme, which this church certainly does. But as far as detailing it goes, I just laid a bunch of these grass landscaping curb, I forget what they're called, curb things, whatever, which I really like these. I wasn't using them before in the city. I was using the older grass curbs from King Leno, which, don't get me wrong, those things are still great. He has also the networks for those, which is awesome as well, which I probably honestly could have used here instead of these. It probably would have made it a little easier. But with these, they are the option for non-terrain conforming or terrain conforming, and they're just a little more detailed. The curb part itself is much more narrow, whereas King Leno's curb is quite thick, like relative to the size of the people and cars running around. Like the curbs appear to be the size of like 2 or 3 feet wide, which isn't quite realistic if you actually take the moment to actually look at it. But yeah, these are really nice, awesome grass curbs, because they also come in gravel and different textures, but they're very detailed, and I definitely going to start using these, and probably instead of just the King Leno curbs around the city. But yeah, so that's really all I did for the detailing here. It was hard to tell exactly what was around this church, at least based on the aerial views that I was going off of this time. I mean, the modern Google Earth view, you can clearly tell, but the roads have changed a tad bit, at least they seem to have, and I mean, the road network I have here kind of curving around it isn't very accurate to what there is in real life, but the roads that I had already placed down and lined up, they weren't quite going to converge at the correct point to actually make it look like the church and the roads do in real life. So again, that's a small detail. I'm not going for 100% one-for-one copy of Berlin, so that's not super important. But it's a really cool church nonetheless, and I like the location, and it turns out cool, even though I just, like I said, just placed these curbs, some grass, bushes, and trees, but it looks nice from a distance, and I don't actually build all around it in this episode. That'll be probably off camera, maybe some on, depending on exactly what the future episodes hold, but a lot of it is just more of these just residential commercial blocks that are quite repetitive. So yeah, most of it's going to be off camera. Not to mention, I always, as much as I do enjoy making the videos, I still, from time to time, just want to sit back, not have to worry about recording or making quality shots in my video, with the thought of, I have to make this so it's not super jerky. You have to keep the camera a little more still, so it's easier to view. But yeah, sometimes it's nice to just sit back and not have to worry about any of that and just build off camera. Nothing that's super important or really cool, because I leave that for the videos. But yeah, I still like to do that whenever I can. But anyways, more of here is just placing some of these blocks down. One thing I did there is for the smaller buildings, I like to do is just copy with Move It the building and flip it around so it looks like it's a little larger, and that there's some sort of like back entrance or patio or something. Maybe it's a restaurant or some nice residential tenement. I'm not really sure, but yeah, I like doing that. That's something new I've started doing, because since I've been using Move It, or sorry, not Move It, what am I thinking? Procedural objects. There we go. Since I've been using procedural objects a ton more now, pretty much in every episode, even if it's just small insignificant things. But since I'm using it so much, I just turn those buildings into PO buildings, so they don't complain about, no connection to the road or, all that nonsense that drives me nuts about buildings and parks that aren't placed exactly next to a road. That's one thing I wish this game would figure out, some sort of mod or something. I'm not really sure, but what I'm doing about right here is I just place this building and just throw it in on the opposite end of the building because it makes it a little larger, which, looking at all the satellite views, it does appear as though there's a ton of buildings that seem to be much longer than the ones that I'm placing, or at least the ones that are available in the workshop. So that makes them longer, and again, looks like there's some sort of back patio or, entrance, whatever it may be. So that's cool. So that's going to do it for the episode today. Be sure to drop your suggestions of what you want to see built next in the city. I'm curious to know what you guys want to see. So yeah, go ahead and do that if you have any ideas, and I will see you all next time.